It's no secret at this point that I'm a fan of Sonic the Hedgehog. I've mentioned several times that Sonic was what I grew up with, that he was my foray into video games at a young age, and as a result, more or less shaped what kind of person I would become today through my hobbies and interests. Yeah, that sounds dramatic, but I mean, think about it. If my parents hadn't bought us the Sega Genesis, then we might be living in a universe where I was making football analysis videos right now or something. I've made a few videos on Sonic at this point, some serious and some not, but ever since I started this channel, there was always one video I wanted to make at some point. And I figure now's as good a time as any to try and tackle it. I've held off because I wasn't sure what I actually wanted to say about the game. I mean, it's one that hundreds of people have made videos about at this point, and everything that could have been picked apart about it has already been done a million times over. So I'm not really going to try and focus on that, the whole analysis thing, or trying to make a particular argument on why I think this game is good or bad. The format of the video is still going to have some of that review structure, but that's more just because it's a bit easier to script and talk about that way. I'm going to try and spend this video talking more about my personal relationship with this game and why I love it. Because I do. This is my favorite video game, Sonic Adventure 2. Sonic Adventure 2 is a game originally released on the Sega Dreamcast in 2001, and if the conspicuous 2 in the title didn't tip you off, it's a sequel to the hit 1999 Dreamcast game, Sonic Adventure. Unfortunately, growing up, I never actually owned a Dreamcast, so while I was eager to continue my journey with my dear friend Sonic with his leap into 3D, I was stonewalled at this particular avenue. Time would pass, and I would stare forlorn at pictures of Sonic and Knuckles and this cool-looking dude named Shadow who had suddenly appeared. I'd look at them in magazines and display cases, but it wouldn't be until some time later, after the failure of the Dreamcast, that I'd see a startling announcement in an issue of Nintendo Power covering Japan's Space World video game conference. Sonic Adventure 2 was getting a GameCube port. It was going to be on a console that my family actually owned. And let me tell you, I freaked out. So I saved my money, convinced my dad to drive me to GameStop when it came out, and bought the game that had eluded me for what seemed like ages. In reality, it was really just a year, but I was like, 10? Time moves slow at that age. My treasure, my holy grail, my special stage Chaos Emerald, it was finally here. And when I got home, I was so overly excited to play it, I accidentally cut into the box plastic with the scissors, leaving a little Yamcha scar on it that's still there to this day. And you know, after all that time of waiting, I was probably bound for some disappointment, right? I mean, really, nothing could possibly have been worth that kind of wait. Nothing could possibly live up to that hype. Nothing could possibly... It was the most amazing thing I had ever experienced in my life up until that point. Okay, that was all a very rose-colored glasses-filled recap of my childhood experience with the game, and growing older and having experienced the passing of time and aging of interests and opinions, I can fully see well that Sonic Adventure 2 is not a perfect game. Hell, I don't even think it's the best 3D Sonic game, for that matter. But I never said it was the best game ever made. I just said it was my favorite. It is. Sonic Adventure 2 was a direct sequel to Sonic Adventure, but the game had some standout differences. For starters, instead of having 6 playable campaigns, all with their own storylines running concurrently to each other, you instead had 2 main storylines, with the hero side of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, and the dark side with Shadow, Eggman, and Rouge. And then a final story that utilized everyone in some way. Each character had their own counterparts on the opposite side, and their gameplay was identical to each other as a result. So what really happened was that Sonic Team took a look at the playable characters from the first game and cut out the 2 worst ones, while also turning Tails' gameplay into a version of Gamma's. Sonic and Shadow had high-speed action stages, Knuckles and Rouge were treasure hunting for 3 MacGuffins in a stage, and Tails and Eggman had mech shooting levels where they blast away through tons of robots. The game also cut out the adventure field mechanic altogether. You know, one of the main reasons the game was called Sonic Adventure in the first place, to my understanding. Instead of running around in the hub level between stages where you could explore or talk to weirdly realistic human beings or find secrets like upgrades, each level just played one after another like a typical Sonic game. And at this point of the video, you would expect the common talking points to come in. Those being that the high-speed stages with Sonic and Shadow are the best in the game, which they are, or how City Escape is an incredible opening for the hero side, which it is, before then going down the typical lanes of the treasure hunting stages are okay at best, but the shooting stages are just absolutely horrible. And yeah, there's plenty of legitimate criticism to be leveled there, I'll admit it. Like, I do think it's annoying how in the treasure hunting stages, your radar only picks up the next available item, so you could run by whatever you're looking for and not know it unless you spot it with the naked eye. And yeah, the beeping sound of the targeting laser on the shooting stage is annoying. It will prepare you for that inevitable tinnitus later in life. But beyond that, I gotta say I didn't really experience the same issues with this game that a lot of other people seem to. The treasure hunting stages were a ton of fun because of the freedom of exploration they felt they had, and the shooting stages were fun shooting gallery of moving through a level and blasting everything in sight. I mean, the first time I played a shooting stage as a kid, I just mashed the button down constantly. Woo! Yeah! Woo! I never really liked complaining about the whole gameplay styles in Sonic Adventure 2 because for me, it was always more about the quality which varied from stage to stage. Like, I personally thought not all the speed stages were great. For example, on the Dark Story, Shadow's first stage, Radical Highway, is a blast. It's a high-speed romp as the military's gunning for you, with a killer soundtrack, huge loops, and a sense of speed that all makes it really freaking cool and fun. Then his next stage, White Jungle, has a similar sense of scale and speed as you race against the clock to try and save Rouge before the island you're on is about to explode. And then there's Skyrail, which is full of wonky physics and some annoying rail grinding, and then there's Final Chase, which is even more wonky physics due to the main gimmick being that you have to jump between rotating cylinder platforms with their own gravity. It was a whimper of a final level for the campaign, to be sure. But yeah, every character has their own stellar moments in the campaign, as well as having a few stinkers. But for every aquatic mine, there was a pumpkin hill, or for every sand ocean, there was a cosmic wall. And not only that, but despite each character being a mirror of someone else, every stage felt like it tailored its personality to the character that it was made for. And I really like that phrase, stage personality. Like, I would use it more if a quick Google search didn't reveal that the top hits for that are psychosexual theory with Sigmund Freud. After all, I'd hate to mean to say one thing when I'm actually talking about your mother. Okay, but seriously, when it comes to Sonic Adventure, I've always appreciated how each stage just fits the character that it accompanied. Like how most of Sonic's stages are bright, open, and colorful in some way, which complements his heroic, carefree, and adventurous nature. City Escape's a great and easy example. The level starts with Sonic falling out of the sky, snowboarding down a street on a piece of metal, pulling off tricks before he hits the ground running. He overcomes every single obstacle that's thrown his way, no matter how impractical and ridiculous it gets, because he's Sonic the Hedgehog, man! He's always gonna win! That kind of stage personality and theming plays into almost all the other stages for Sonic as well. Metal Harbor is probably one of my favorite Sonic levels ever. It's not a long stage, but it's filled with high-speed loops, quick platforming, and gives you the light-speed shoes, which gives you even more mobility. The end of the stage dares you to go above and beyond for a higher score by climbing a missile that's getting ready to launch it to the stratosphere. And while you can make it onto the rocket at the midsection pretty easily, you can choose to keep going for better chances at a higher rank. And why wouldn't you? You're Sonic the Hedgehog, the fastest thing alive, the most daring of heroes. So reach down deep, throw your arms behind you, clench your butt cheeks and, clench your butt cheeks and go beyond. And of course that sort of stage personality isn't just reserved for Sonic. Knuckles is treasure hunting for an immensely powerful artifact, so most of his stages, with a few exceptions, feel like they could be ripped out of Indiana Jones. Rouge is a thief and a super spy, so what are her stages themed around? Stealing stuff and sneaking around. Eggman wants to dominate the world and crush whoever gets in his way. Well, his stages involve blowing his way into places with overwhelming force. Tails wants to support Sonic. His stages are almost always centered around doing that in some way, whether it be blowing up the cannon's power supply or just busting him out of prison. Shadow's intense, dark, and serious, and so a majority of his stages have a sense of powerful, weighted presence behind them. And you might be listening to all this and thinking it's over analytical, and hey, you might also be right. But in my opinion, the strongest part of Sonic Adventure 2 and really just Sonic in general has always been the personality that the series carries. The personality of the characters, the personality of the stages, the personality of the music. God, the personality of the music. Before I had a CD player, I used to just turn on the sound test for Sonic Adventure 2 and just sit there and listen to the music. If you really want to get into stage personality, every stage has a soundtrack that perfectly captures the emotion and power of it. I freaking adore Sonic Adventure 2's soundtrack. And that personality, the thing that Sonic games are so well known for, even extends into the story. Though, not really in the way that I've described, because the story of Sonic Adventure games are bad shit. And I love them. It's funny to look back at who Sonic's direct competition was during this era and think about how it was Mario. That was the classic matchup for those days. Red versus Blue, Nintendo versus Sega, Mario versus Sonic. In those days, those were the peak console wars before Sony and Microsoft would become contenders. So the result was that there was also this direct comparison between the two for just about anything. And that's why it's especially funny to think about where the games went when it came to story during their jump to 3D. Neither Mario or Sonic were super in-depth fiction during their 2D days. I mean, just like most games, they didn't have really in-depth scripts or narratives. Mario had his run with an RPG-style game, but even then, the general progression of the stories were always the same. Fight an evil king, save a kingdom, maybe get a smooch. Sonic games were also basic. Eggman, or Robotnik as he was known in the West, is stuffing critters into robots and wants to rule the world. Save the critters, get the Chaos Emeralds, kick his butt, roll credits. When Mario made the leap to 3D with Mario 64, the story was a basic extension of the older games. You're going to play across various colorful and exciting worlds, beat Bowser, and save a princess. Got it? Great, get to it. So what did Sonic do? Well, we kept the general idea of Eggman wanting to rule the world and stuffing robots and animals. But also we've got incredible lifelike human cities, gods of destruction, themes of tribalism, war, and weapons of mass destruction, child death, revenge, and so much more. Mario's stories felt like a logical progression for the series to take, where they'd maybe up the ante with the stakes, but never really felt like a huge leap in logic from how we got to point A to point B. The Sonic Adventure games, on the other hand, felt like a bunch of kids were playing Sonic on the playground, then some other kid who had just really gotten into Final Fantasy or watching anime on Toonami came along and started adding in more and more stuff into the plot, regardless of whether it seemed to fit with how the original game started. And I loved it. Seriously, I was that kid. Unironically, I loved the stories of the Sonic Adventure games. In terms of presentation, I think the modern voice actors for the Sonic series do a great job. Roger Craig Smith especially has killed it as Sonic for years, but I have a special fondness for the cast of this game. Scott Dreyer is still my favorite iteration of Knuckles, Ryan Drummond's Sonic voice is iconic, as is David Humphrey as Shadow, and Dean Bristow's Dr. Eggman completely stole the show. May he rest in peace. As much as people like to clown on the voice acting, it's really not that bad. The funniest thing is just how characters tend to talk over each other in cutscenes. I never saw that as a flaw, like some folks do. Yeah, I mean, it's silly, okay. But it's also weirdly just kind of makes it more real, in a way. Like, take this early scene where Shadow's telling Sonic who he is, and he's really far away. It's almost like Shadow really doesn't give a crap about whatever Sonic's going on about in the moment. Or, maybe he just can't hear him.
Emerald toward the Shadow. I'm the
What?
world's ultimate life form.
Dude, what? Or when Knuckles and Rouge are arguing amongst themselves and Eggman just doesn't care, so he just flies off.
And by the way, that's not your emerald.
Doesn't matter. I'll look into it once I get back to it.
For later when Sonic and Shadow run into each other again and they start talking over each other as they're making their threats.
Faker, I think you're the fake hedgehog around here. You're comparing yourself to me? Huh. You're not even good enough to be
I'll
my
make you
friend.
eat those words.
It's great. That's how actual conversations work. People get impatient or flustered and start talking over each other. It's not like an RPG where everyone's just patiently waiting for people to finish their sentences. The script is cheesy and silly at points, but if you're gonna write a Sonic game, I'm certainly okay with some ham and cheese. Give me some lame one-liners, give me some talks about friendship, and give me Dr. Eggman having his own theme song which slaps way harder than it really needs to be, holy crap. So with all that, do I love everything about Sonic Adventure 2? Well, no. As mentioned before, I don't think it's a perfect game or anything, but even then, there's an aspect of this game that I really don't like. And granted, my reasons for not liking it are incredibly petty, but stick with me here. Anytime the prospect of a new Sonic game gets brought up, there is one feature that everyone always clamors for: the Chow Garden. The Chow Garden is a virtual pet simulator where you can raise small blue little critters called Chow. The Chow can be given items that will increase their stats, animals that will give them stat bonuses while also changing their appearance in some way, and they can eventually evolve into stronger versions of themselves once enough love and care has been given. You can even take them to kindergarten, where they will learn more about becoming excellent members of Chow society. Yes, your Chow will be exposed to the arts of Shakespeare, Picasso, and of course, Crush 40. Then you can put those stat gains to good use by having your Chow take part in races, beat other Chow in submission in Chow karate, the whole works. There's a lot to be done with Chow, and it's easy to see why people really love them, spend hours with them, and are just, clamoring for them to come back. They want to relive that Sonic Adventure experience. And I get it. I do. I get it. I get it. I totally get it. I get it. Completely get it. 100% get it. Absolutely get it. Get it. Get it off their way. Oh yeah, get it. Get it. Get it. Get it. I get it. But these little bastards have denied me Greenhill, and that's a chip on my shoulder I haven't let go. Alright, even more context. In Sonic Adventure 2, you have these things called emblems. They're your standard trophies that you collect in a game that represent you've completed something. You get emblems in a lot of ways, most commonly just by completing stages. Whenever you complete a stage for the first time, you'll get an emblem. When you complete the mission select mode and now have different objectives to complete in a stage, like getting 100 rings or finding the hidden Chow or beating the stage in a time limit, you get another emblem. You get emblems for beating the boss rush mode, beating the kart race modes, completing every stage, getting A rank in every single stage, and you get other rewards for doing these things too, like how if you complete all the characters' stages, you unlock a special kart for them in the kart racing mode. And getting all A rank unlocks an alternate outfit for them in multiplayer that has some sort of twist to their normal gameplay. These were rewards for playing the base game and playing it well, to master your craft of Sonic Adventure 2. And it also leaves a scar on you as a player. I mean, I've played these stages so many times now to reach A rank on them all. It has gotten to the point where I'm just conditioned to freak out if I get anything less than oh! And what do you get for collecting all the emblems in the game? You unlock an extra stage, a 3D version of Greenhill Zone, the very first Sonic stage of the series, which, as a kid, that was a pretty cool thing to get after 100% completing the game, since this was before Greenhill wasn't beaten into the dirt with how many times it's shown up now. So, since this is my favorite game, I naturally did this, right? No. And by now, you have probably guessed why. There are emblems locked behind Chow content. You have to do the fucking Chow Garden if you want to get to Greenhill. I don't like virtual pet content and never really have. If there's an adventuring RPG twist to it, like Pokemon, where you're traveling throughout the world and battling is the primary mechanic, sure. But games like that also severely downplay the virtual pet aspect. It's systems like the Chow Garden that I just don't personally find fun. I don't like scrounging stages and enemies for the perfect stat-enhancing drugs to give to my virtual babies, or having to put them onto a racetrack or in the Thunderdome and hope they come out on top after hours of raising them. And that's kind of the thing about the Chow Garden. It's not that it's hard or difficult, or at least not difficult in the way that I would call difficult. It's just time-consuming. It's not hard to figure out what the best combination of upgrades, cuddle time, and kindergarten classes you need to have your Chow to do in order to make the most broken Chow possible that will win every race and snap all the other kids' wrists at Pee-wee Karate. Literally, all you have to do for that is just sit down and make a spreadsheet and follow it. And hey, lots of people like that kind of game. Lots of people love the Chow Garden, not just for this, but they also just love raising cute little Chow. I understand. understand. I get where they're coming from. But this was always such a personal disservice to me. How could you do this to me, Sonic Adventure 2? How could you make me play all those blood-pumping levels and modes, and then deny me 100% completion because I didn't want to suffer the Chow Garden? How could you? At the end of the day, though, even the Chow Garden doesn't take away my love for Sonic Adventure 2. This is my favorite game of all time. It's not the best game I've ever played. It's not even a game that I will go up and show to random people on the street and claim they must play it. Sonic Adventure 2 is a product of its time, and while I do think it is held up for the most part, I do understand that I will never be able to look at this game through a purely objective lens. So I won't. Bury me with Sonic Adventure 2, lay down my casket to the tunes of Crush 40, have a Knuckles cosplayer deliver my eulogy. I love you, Sonic Adventure 2. It'll be me and you until the end of time.
Live and learn.